Your retirement plan could pass every Monte Carlo simulation, the fancy percentage chance of success charts you always see with flying colors, and still completely fail when it matters most. I know that sounds backwards, especially if you've spent years obsessing over withdrawal rates and portfolio allocations. But after 25 years as a financial advisor and helping over 1,000 people transition into retirement, I've seen mathematically perfect plans crumble in the real world, others with less impressive numbers thrive. The difference is that one mindset addresses a spreadsheet while the other addresses the human being behind it. Today, I'm going to challenge the way most advisors approach retirement planning and show you why emotional readiness and behavioral psychology matters just as much as your asset allocation. Chapter 1, the myth of the perfect plan on paper. Over 50% of financial advisors believe their clients are financially prepared for retirement. Sounds reassuring, right? But only 11% of those same advisors believe their clients are emotionally prepared. We've built this entire industry around optimizing numbers, running thousands of Monte Carlo simulations and stress testing portfolios against every market scenario imaginable. And yet the vast majority of people walking into retirement with a green light from their financial plan are emotionally unprepared for what's actually about to happen. I've seen so many people come in with a beautifully constructed plan from another advisor. The projections look great. The withdrawal strategy is tax efficient. The asset allocation is reasonably balanced, yet they're terrified. They can't pull the trigger because something feels off, even though the math says they're ready. Retirement isn't a math problem to be solved. It's a life transition to be navigated. The numbers tell you if you can afford to stop working. They don't tell you who you'll be when you do, or account for the fear that grips you the first time you see portfolio drop 20% and there's no paycheck coming in behind it. This is where Monte Carlo simulations fundamentally fail to account for how investors actually react to volatility and how they adjust spending in real time. These tools assume you're a robot who will stick to the plan no matter what. You're not a robot. You're a human being with fears, hopes, and a lifetime of an emotional relationship with money. Chapter 2, the emotional realities spreadsheets miss. Let's talk about what actually happens when someone retires, because this is where most plans fall apart. Identity loss. For 30 or 40 years, you've been introduced as what you do for a living. You're the accountant, the engineer, the business owner. The identity gave you structure, purpose, and social connection. Then overnight, you're just retired. You're not getting up and going to the office. You don't have the routine. You haven't built hobbies, social networks, or a sense of purpose outside of work. Retirement hits like a wall, not a vacation. People don't want to talk about this enough, but the depression, the loneliness, the loss of feeling is needed. It's real, and it doesn't show up anywhere in a Monte Carlo simulation. Fear of spending. Nearly half of all retirees say their top fear is outliving their savings. And this fear often has nothing to do with the actual math. I see people with $5 million who are terrified to spend $150,000 a year, even though their plan easily supports it. They spend a lifetime accumulating and they can't just shift into distribution mode. It's a psychological gear change that most plans completely ignore. Think about it this way. Someone's following a reasonable withdrawal strategy. The plan shows they'll likely end retirement with more money than they started with. Then the market drops 15% and they panic. They cut spending by 30%, cancel trips, and delay home repairs they actually need. The plan said they'd be fine, but the emotional weight of watching that account balance drop overrode all the logic. Family dynamics. There's guilt around spending money on yourself when you could leave it to the kids. But the truth is, the vast majority of adult children want to see you enjoy what you worked for, especially if they get to be involved. There's the burden of potentially becoming financially dependent on family if something goes wrong. These aren't line items in a financial plan, but they influence every decision. Market downturns hit differently in retirement. Market volatility anxiety is a legitimate concern. When you're working and contributing to your 401k, a market crash is annoying but manageable. You might even buy the dip. But when you're retired and drawing down, that same crash feels existential. You're watching your nest egg shrink while simultaneously pulling from it. If you're not prepared for it, it can absolutely decimate your retirement. But that's why you have a plan. I went through this with clients in 2008. Just about every single person who told me they could handle a downturn was calling me wanting to pull out of the market. Until you're tested, you don't know how you'll react. That's not something a spreadsheet can predict. Chapter 3. Debt psychology in retirement. This is a perfect example of the gap between mathematical optimization and emotional reality. I regularly see situations where someone could mathematically benefit from carrying a low interest mortgage into retirement. Maybe they locked in a 3% rate and their portfolio is earning 7%. The math is simple. Keep the mortgage and invest the difference. But the emotional cost of carrying that debt wipes out the financial benefit for a lot of people. About 35% of financially stressed Americans cite too much debt as their key stressor, and it drives conservative behavior that actually delays good financial decisions. People make extra mortgage payments instead of maintaining flexibility. They refuse to use home equity lines even when it would smooth their cash flow. Picture a couple with $2 million in savings and a $200,000 mortgage at 2.75%. Their advisor shows them that keeping the mortgage and investing the difference will likely leave them $150,000 wealthier over 15 years. But they can't sleep at night knowing they owe that much money. Every month, that payment feels like a weight on their chest. So they pay off the house. Net worth is slightly lower on paper, but their stress drops dramatically. They can breathe. Their retirement feels more secure. Was that the wrong decision? Not if it lets them actually enjoy retirement. I'd rather see a client sleep well at night with a slightly less optimal plan than watch them white knuckle their way through the best years of their life because the math said to keep the mortgage. The best financial plan is the one you can stick to and live with, not the one that produces the highest theoretical return on a spreadsheet. Chapter 4, the go-go years trap. One of the biggest sources of retirement regret I see, and it's a direct result of math-only planning. Most retirement plans assume you'll spend the same amount every year adjusted for inflation for 30 years. That's not how retirement actually works. It happens in 3 phases. The go-go years when you're healthy and active, the slow-go years when you're less mobile, and the no-go years when health limitations take over. The data backs this up. The average retired household naturally cuts spending by about 1.5% per year throughout retirement. Your expenses are very likely to decline as you age. The tragedy is that most people delay gratification through the go-go years because they're worried about running out of money later. They postpone the international trips. They don't upgrade to the nicer RV. They hesitate to help their grandkids with college. Nearly a third of recent retirees wish they had started enjoying their money earlier, and many wish they had prioritized lifestyle experiences over just accumulating more. That's a real regret from people who followed math-only plans. Imagine a couple that retires at 65 with $1.8 million. Their plan says they can safely spend $90,000 a year, but for the first 5 years, they only spend $60,000 because they're being conservative. They skip the Alaskan cruise. They don't visit their daughter in Europe. They keep driving the old car. Then at 70, one of them has a stroke. Suddenly, retirement isn't about adventure anymore. It's about medical appointments and physical therapy. They have $2.3 million now because the market was good and they underspent, but they can't buy back those healthy years. They can't recapture the time when they both had the energy and mobility to do the things they dreamed about. The math said they were being smart. The reality is they robbed themselves of the best years of their retirement because no one gave them permission to actually live. Chapter 5, how we approach this differently. At Modern Capital, the numbers are table stakes. That's the baseline, not the finish line. Our planning starts with questions that have nothing to do with your money. What gives your life meaning? What would you regret not doing? What does a Tuesday afternoon in retirement actually look like? How will you replace the social connections from work? What fears keep you up at night? And are they based in reality or emotion? We incorporate emotional check-ins throughout the planning process and into retirement itself. It's not enough to review your portfolio quarterly. We need to review your life quarterly. Are you spending on the things that matter? Are you falling into the trap of hoarding money out of fear? Are you adjusting your lifestyle as your health and energy change? We stress test more than just portfolios. We stress test life transition. What happens to your sense of purpose if you retire? What happens to your marriage when you're spending 24/7 together? What happens to your social network when you leave your career? These aren't financial questions, but they absolutely determine whether your retirement succeeds or fails. Traditional Monte Carlo simulations assume fixed spending patterns. Real retirees adjust spending dynamically based on markets, health, and life circumstances. So we build flexibility into every plan. Permission to spend more in your go-go years. Permission to adjust when markets get volatile. Permission to prioritize experiences over leaving a bigger inheritance. The math should serve your life, not constrain it. We also address the behavioral side head on. Too many retirees struggle with budgeting and living off investments. So we create systems that make the behavioral part easier, whether that's bucket strategies that reduce market anxiety or automated distributions that remove decision fatigue. Chapter 6, what this means for you. If you're planning for retirement or already in it, here's what I want you to take from this. Evaluate your current plan honestly. Does it address how you feel, not just what you'll have? Does your advisor ask you about your fears, your purpose, or your vision for retirement? Or do they just run projections and rebalance? Recognize that financial readiness and emotional readiness are 2 different things. Nearly half of Americans are reporting more stress heading into this year than last, even as we have markets that have performed relatively well. That disconnect tells you something important. The numbers alone aren't enough. Give yourself permission to front-load experiences. Be prudent, yes. Plan for longevity, absolutely. But don't sacrifice your healthiest years to leave a bigger inheritance your kids may not need for decades. And finally, the best plan isn't really about being mathematically optimal. It's about having the flexibility to handle whatever may come and having the freedom to live your life to the fullest. If this resonated with you and you're realizing your plan might be missing the human element, I'd encourage you to visit our website to learn more about how Modern Capital approaches retirement planning differently. We don't just manage portfolios, we help you build a retirement you'll actually want to live.